This 798-kilogram machine, costing $15 million, produces 5 times a supercar's grip, yet cannot cross a public intersection. Watch what happens the moment its engine starts on a cold morning. Physics itself decides where it may drive. Picture a Formula One car rolled silently to a suburban street, waiting behind a red traffic light. Ahead lies a crosswalk, a delivery van, a bicycle, and the most sophisticated engineering machine ever built sits helpless. In the eyes of the law, it is not a car. It is a projectile, a single-purpose weapon, designed for one surface, one temperature, one mission. The reason it cannot drive here is physics itself, not speed. The numbers tell the story. A modern Formula One car weighs roughly 798 kilograms, lighter than a compact hatchback. It produces close to 1,000 horsepower from a hybrid power unit no larger than an ordinary carry-on suitcase. It generates aerodynamic downforce equal to 3 times its own mass at full velocity, glued to the tarmac. Every component, from carbon fiber survival cell to titanium wheel nuts, exists to serve one single goal: lap time. Now consider the road. Every vehicle you pass has been certified through a legal process called type approval. It guarantees the machine will behave predictably in traffic, a framework the Formula One car was never designed for. In Europe, standards come from the United Nations Economic Commission. In America, the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. In Japan, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport writes them. These documents run to thousands of pages. They dictate headlight height, license plate reflectivity, door pillar crush resistance, and the exact chemical composition of exhaust. A Formula One car meets none of these regulations. Not one. It is a masterpiece, legally a projectile. Without type approval, there is no license plate. Without a plate, no insurance. Without insurance, no legal road use. No developed nation on Earth permits it on public roads, but the first barrier appears before the engine starts. Walk around the machine. Look for a headlight. None. A turn signal. Absent. A mirror. Completely missing. A windshield to block a stone thrown by a truck tire. The cockpit remains open to the sky, unprotected. Only a titanium halo guards the driver. No wipers, no glass. No reverse gear. Tracks never reverse. Then consider the ride height. A Formula One car rides roughly 20 millimeters above the asphalt. 20 millimeters. That is the thickness of 8 stacked coins. A standard European speed bump rises 75 to 100 millimeters. The car would not merely scrape, it would tear open its floor, rip apart the diffuser, sever hydraulic lines. It would beach itself on the very obstacle designed to slow a family sedan. Total structural catastrophe on impact. A pothole, a manhole cover, a fallen branch. Each becomes catastrophic. Yet the real disqualification lies deeper still. Deep inside the engine itself. To understand why, we must travel back in time to Formula One's earliest days. In the early 1950s, when Formula One was born, road cars and race cars looked almost identical. Drivers would take Jaguars and Ferraris straight off the showroom floor, then race them at Le Mans on Saturday. The next day they drove those same machines home. Regulations were minimal. Roads were quieter. Boundaries barely existed. The idea of a specialized track-only machine did not yet exist in the modern form we now recognize today. Then came June 11, 1955. At Le Mans, a Mercedes race car struck a barrier, disintegrating into the crowd. 83 spectators died. It remains the deadliest accident in motorsport history. The disaster fractured the sport entirely. Governments across Europe demanded safer roads, safer factories, safer cars. Race cars pushed one way, passenger cars the other. Homologation was born. Over the following decades, road cars accumulated regulation upon regulation, each rule reshaping the machine. Emissions standards, crash test protocols, seatbelt laws, airbag mandates, pedestrian impact requirements, each added weight and cost. but each also saved lives. By 2020, a modern family car had to survive 12 distinct crash scenarios. It had to filter exhaust to near-zero pollutant levels and protect a pedestrian in a frontal collision. Formula One, meanwhile, evolved the opposite direction. It became lighter, faster, sharper, more extreme, a purebred animal, a machine that could only survive in a controlled environment. And yet, the naive assumption of disqualification is wrong. Most people believe a Formula One car cannot drive on public roads because it is simply too fast. This is a myth. A modern F1 car reaches roughly 370 km per hour at maximum. Impressive, but not exceptional. The Bugatti Chiron Supersport reaches 490 km per hour. The Koenigsegg Jesko touches similar figures. The SSC Tuatara has been officially recorded above 500 km per hour. All of these hypercars are road legal. They wear license plates and pay full insurance premiums annually. They stop at traffic lights next to ordinary grocery store minivans, treated as street-legal vehicles by every regulator. So, speed is not the disqualifier. The real reason is fragility. Thermal fragility, mechanical fragility throughout. A Formula One engine cannot even start on a cold morning without specialized external heating equipment nearby. The oil, thick as honey at ambient temperature, must first be heated to roughly 80 degrees Celsius. Only then can combustion begin without shredding its own bearings. Every fluid demands a narrow thermal window. The tires tell the same story. A Formula One tire is essentially a precision chemical machine itself. Its rubber compound reaches peak grip at roughly 100 degrees Celsius across the working surface layer. Below that, the tire behaves like polished plastic on ice, offering almost no usable friction whatsoever. Drivers weave violently on formation laps not for spectacle, but to generate heat for meaningful braking grip. Imagine driving to work with tires that offer zero grip for the first 10 minutes of commuting. Imagine trying to stop at a red light and simply sliding straight through it every single time. But temperature is only the beginning of this impossibility. Consider the clutch hidden inside the Formula One. A road car clutch is engineered to survive 100,000 engagements across a full decade of ownership. Every stop sign, every parking maneuver, every hill start. The domestic clutch endures them all quietly. A Formula One clutch is designed for approximately 20 launches. 20. Then inspected, refurbished, or discarded entirely. It uses carbon plates the size of a coffee cup, engineered for one purpose alone: standing start launches. In ordinary stop-and-go city traffic, that same racing clutch would burn itself completely through in mere minutes. The brakes tell the same story. Carbon-carbon brake discs, black as obsidian, are the pinnacle of stopping technology. On the track, they slow the car from 300 km per hour to 80 in under 2 seconds. But here's the problem: they are useless below 400 degrees Celsius. Cold carbon brakes generate almost no friction. Press the pedal at a suburban intersection and it sinks to the floor, the car continuing to roll forward. In street conditions, cold carbon brakes cannot generate enough heat to function. The technology fails outside its arena. Then there is the fuel. Formula One burns a specialized racing blend, formulated precisely within the sport's strict rules. Its octane rating hovers near 102, far beyond what any commercial fuel station can provide. Ordinary pump gasoline, even premium unleaded, does not meet the required specifications. Pour it in and disaster begins. The injection system, calibrated to the molecule, would misfire, detonate, and shred internal components within only a few kilometers. Emissions present another impossibility. The European Union enforces a standard called Euro 7 for every passenger car sold today. It strictly limits nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, particulates, and hydrocarbons to almost microscopic thresholds, parts per million tolerances. A Formula One engine, one of the most thermally efficient combustion units ever built, still exceeds these limits catastrophically. It exceeds them by orders of magnitude in unburned hydrocarbons and nitrogen compounds spilling from the combustion chambers. There is no catalytic converter. There is no particulate filter. There is nothing between combustion and the outside air. There is only a titanium exhaust, engineered to extract power from the engine, never to clean the air behind. And the noise. A modern hybrid F1 power unit produces sound pressure near 130 decibels, pain threshold. In every developed country, the legal limit for a road-going vehicle sits between 72 and 80 decibels. One Formula One car through a residential street would exceed local noise ordinances by a factor of 10,000. It would trigger car alarms, break windows in extreme cases, violate laws in every jurisdiction on Earth. Then comes the factor no engineer can negotiate around: safety certification and the crash tests it demands. To sell a car for road use, a manufacturer must submit it to more than 40 distinct crash tests. Frontal impact at 56 km per hour, side impact, rear impact, roof crash resistance, pole tests, small overlap tests, pedestrian head form and leg form impacts, whiplash simulations. Each test measures forces on crash test dummies and records deformation. Each evaluates the survival envelope of every occupant and every bystander, a standard the racing car cannot approach. A Formula One monocoque, the carbon fiber tub housing the driver, is one of the strongest vehicle structures ever built. It can withstand impacts of over 50 G, deceleration forces that would liquefy a human without proper restraint. But it is optimized for track impacts, head-on collisions into tire barriers, rotational crashes into gravel traps. It is not designed for the specific physics of a road accident. There is no pedestrian crumple zone.
A Formula One nose, sharp as a spear, would fatally injure any pedestrian struck at even moderate speed. There are no airbags, there are no side impact door beams, because there are no doors on the car. There is no rear crash structure meaningful for a road rear-end collision, nothing to absorb the impact. In the language of type approval, it fails every test, because it was never designed to take them. Insurance underwriters understand instantly. No major insurer on Earth will write a policy for a Formula One car. The liability is uncalculable. Without insurance, a vehicle identification number cannot be issued for the machine at all. Without a VIN, the car legally does not exist as a road-going object anywhere in the modern regulatory system. It is a piece of industrial equipment, no more registerable than a jet engine or a wind turbine. One legendary attempt tested every one of these limits, not on a circuit, but on ordinary public streets. The year was 2011. Red Bull Racing, then dominating Formula One, decided to celebrate their success. They drove a genuine race car through the streets of a small Austrian town for a public celebration event. The chassis was the RB7, the car that would win that season's championship with Sebastian Vettel driving. The event required special government dispensation. The route was fully closed and police cordons ran for kilometers around it. A support crew of roughly 40 engineers followed with generators, tire warmers, hydraulic preheaters, spare parts and telemetry equipment. The car started with external assistance, its engine screaming across the Alpine Valley as spectators lined the closed streets. It moved perhaps 3 kilometers before stopping. The engine, engineered for continuous high-load operation, could not tolerate low-speed cruising. Its temperatures fell outside their operating window. Its clutch approached destruction between the modest village houses lining the route. Its brakes could not stop at pedestrian speeds. It was, for all its glory, a fish gasping on land. The same story repeats every year at Monaco, the most famous street race in the world on public roads. But those roads are transformed for 6 days beforehand. Manhole covers are welded shut, curbs are removed, Painted lines are ground away. Barriers, fencing, catch nets, marshal posts, medical stations, hundreds of tons of concrete installed. When racing ends, the entire operation reverses. Even Monaco's iconic street event requires rebuilding the city around this machine. This proves the final truth. A Formula One car is not really a car. It is a system. Consider what a road car is. You turn a key, the engine starts, you drive to the grocery store, you park, you walk away. Come back 6 hours later, turn the key, it starts again without hesitation. You drive home in the rain, at night, through traffic, over potholes, up steep hills, in snow.
You do this for 10 years without opening the hood. A road car is an autonomous appliance. It expects to be neglected. Its entire engineering brief is graceful survival under indifferent, everyday human operation. A Formula One car expects the opposite entirely. It expects a crew of roughly 60 specialized people. It expects hot starts with external heating. It expects telemetry engineers reading 300 sensor channels live. It expects tire specialists preparing rubber to precise temperatures. It expects hydraulic technicians, aerodynamicists, and race strategists. Mechanics who can rebuild any component in minutes. It expects a garage. It expects a specialized transport truck. It expects a factory 5,000 kilometers away, analyzing data every single second it is in motion. Take away the crew and the car becomes an inert sculpture, unable to cross a public intersection. Not because it is too fast, not even because it is too loud, but because it cannot stand alone. Road legality, at its philosophical core, means self-sufficiency in traffic, the ability to operate without specialists. One driver, one purpose, one journey, without an army of engineers whispering into radios behind the scenes. The secret lies not in performance, but in purpose. A road car is designed for the world. A Formula One car is designed for a stopwatch. Two evolutionary paths that diverged 70 years ago. And they have never returned to each other. But the future may finally erase this century-old divide. A new generation of hypercars is closing the gap between racetrack and public road at last. The Aston Martin Valkyrie was co-developed by Adrian Newey, the architect behind dominant Formula One championship machines. Its naturally aspirated V12 engine screams past 11,000 revolutions per minute, generating downforce measured in tons. And yet it wears a license plate, headlights, turn signals, technically permitted to drive to a coffee shop. The Mercedes-AMG One installs an actual Formula One power unit, championship hybrid architecture, into a road chassis. Engineers spent years taming its cold start behavior, adding a starter motor to crank the tiny turbocharged V6. Engineers softened its idle and calmed its emissions just barely enough to satisfy European road legal certification standards. The project was delayed by years because the physics of Formula One fundamentally resists domestication for public streets. These machines prove something remarkable. The gap between racing and road can be crossed, but only with enormous engineering compromise at every level. Every degree of civilization added to a race car strips away a fraction of its purity, moving the machine one step toward the world. And so the Formula One car remains where it began, on a closed circuit, surrounded by its crew, alive only within a narrow window. It is the most sophisticated automotive artifact humanity has ever created, and yet it cannot legally cross the street outside your home. That is not a failure of engineering. It is the definition of specialization, the price paid for reaching the absolute edge of performance. A cheetah cannot pull a plow. A scalpel cannot chop wood. A Formula One car simply cannot drive itself to the neighborhood store. Each is perfect at exactly one narrow thing and effectively useless at everything else the ordinary world will ever ask of it. If these engineering answers surprised you, this channel has more films on how humanity conquers the very boundaries of physics itself.
Subscribe to continue the investigation. The next chapter of automotive impossibility and the road legal race technology